This week is a double portion. The portion of Bahar is the first portion, which is the focus of the sabbatical, the mitzvah of observing the sabbatical year. And as we're going to see, the Alter Rebbe quotes the first verse that discusses this, which is, this is kind of a form of Shabbat in the annual cycle. Obviously, we're familiar with Shabbat in the weekly cycle, how we have 6 days of work and the seventh day we rest. But then in the annual cycle, we have 6 years of work, and the seventh year, we and the land rests. So the Alter Rebbe is going to go into some of the fascinating aspects of our relationship with God that are expressed through these two different modes of operation. Because on one hand, we have 6 years that we are not just allowed to work, but supposed to work. Meaning to say, we are supposed to engage and interact in the world using our creative talents and activate them to the fullest. Yet on the seventh year, we are meant to turn inward and replenish our soul from an internal connection, which is what the seventh year, the sabbatical year, represents. It seems like you rest up after you do the work. In the way the pasuk, the verse presents it, it's suggesting the opposite. First you rest up, and then you do the work. It seems counterintuitive. A sabbatical year seemingly belongs after the 6 years, whereas in the Torah it seems to suggest first you have a sabbatical year, and then you have 6 years of labor that follow. So he says that the way to really understand this on a deeper level, and what the relationship between us and God is in this mitzvah, he quotes the famous passage from Shir HaShirim, which is, "Open up for me, my sister, my bride." And this passage, "Open up for me, my sister, my bride," is in a way a bit of a paradox in and of itself. Because my sister, my bride, doesn't really go together. Either you're my sister or you're my bride. They're two different kinds of relationships that are generally mutually exclusive. So what does it mean, open up for me, my sister and my bride? In relationships, there's a michseh. A michseh means a covering. There's sometimes a withdrawal, sometimes a concealment of the true nature and the true love that exists within this relationship. And the task is to reveal it and to bring it to the surface so that it can be celebrated. We can live and bask in the glow of the beauty of that relationship. So he says that this passage is referring to the relationship between God and the Jewish people. And indeed, sometimes the nature of the relationship is more withdrawn, and sometimes it is more revealed. And our task and our effort is not so much to create it, because it's really there. It's to reveal it and bring it to the surface. There's two dimensions to this relationship. There's the achoti, the sister-sibling love, which is a more natural love. It's a love that we're born with. It's a relationship that you don't really have to put in as much effort to establish. And then there is the rayati, which is the spousal love, and that obviously comes through our own initiative and through our own effort. It's not something that we're born with per se. It is something that we need to pursue and to create. This is actually an interesting association and a way to understand what is going on over here. So Ichui Alexandria is actually an Egyptian stitch, a form of sewing that unites two pieces of a garment together in a certain kind of style, which is known as the Alexandrian sewing, the Alexandrian stitch. Now what's interesting about it is that the word Ichui has the same etymology as the word achoti. As you can hear in the sound of it itself, Ichui achoti. So he's referring to the idea that Ichui Alexandri gives us an understanding of, it's going to help us understand a little bit what the love that is referred to as the sibling love of achoti. So just like when we sew things together, we're bringing together two parts, pieces of cloth, two pieces of material that were separate. So now through the stitching, through the ichui, we're unifying them and making them function as one entity, as one unit. Similarly, in a relationship, two people can have independent lives, but coming together brings them and unifies them in a way, brings them together and unifies them in a way that they can function in one unit, which is much more effective. Just like you can't wear two pieces of cloth and say it's a garment, they need to be sewn together, and then they're functional, then they're something we can benefit from them. So too with a relationship, two people independent are like two pieces of shmata, sitting there separate from each other. When they unify and come together, it's like the harmonious union that results in a beautiful garment that is now functional and usable. There's ahava tivit. This ahava tivit means a natural love, which is a natural outcome of the fact that the soul is carved out, so to speak, of its divine source and its divine origin, and it's hewed out of that spiritual rock where God is in existence. So just like in childbirth or in sibling relationships, there's a natural bond that is the result of the siblings coming from the same origin. So too in the souls, there's a natural bond that between us and God by the mere fact that we originate as a piece of God, and that is what our soul really is. So in that regard, it's very natural. There's almost no effort necessary to create this, to reveal it maybe, but to create it, it's already there. You're born with this connection. Your soul is born with this natural love and attachment to its source in God Himself. Because they originate in this highest place of God's essence, therefore, even when they descend down here, they are able to feel that love and that connection with minimal effort. And they just want to be connected, just like a child wants to be connected to their parent. It's not that they have to think about it. It's not that they have to decide, do they or don't they. A young child feels naturally drawn to being connected to their parents. Similarly, on a certain level of the soul, and especially it's revealed in the life of a tzaddik, they just have a natural gravitation towards God because their soul is a part of God. If we just remind ourselves of the soul's connection to God, we'll have a natural craving to maintain that relationship and to celebrate it in the most beautiful way. So this is just a passage that says you just need to think about it and be aware of it, and it's right there. There's no effort, there's no transformation per se. It is a natural outcome of being aware of it. The sibling love is more consistent, and it's continuous. It doesn't really fluctuate. Whereas the other kind of love, which is a love that is a result of meditation or study, in that process, often we are able to reveal a newfound excitement, a newfound love that we didn't feel before. And not only we didn't feel it before, we may also not feel it afterwards either. So it's kind of interesting that we have these two kinds of love. One is more consistent and one is more spontaneous. And the question is, which one is better? Seemingly, consistency has a premium to it, but is that really unique? Is that really special? Is that something that's more natural, and the love that is less consistent has something more special to it because it's something that we've put an effort to create? So this is what he's really discussing over here. Is there more merit to the consistency of the love, or is there more merit to the unique effort of love that rises and engages us from time to time, even though it's not so consistent? The question is, which one should it be? If you want a permanent kind of love to be enduring and everlasting, you're going to have to constantly nourish it and feed it and develop it in order for it to continue to exist. You want it to be, you're going to have to keep working at it. It doesn't exist independent of your efforts. So this is referring to the kind of relationship that is a relationship that needs our involvement, our attention, and is not something that we're naturally born with. more like the spousal relationship that waxes and wanes, but is so much more meaningful in many ways when we reach that level of connection that is born out of the efforts that we put into that relationship. So the pursuit of the love is really the way that this love exists. We can never say we've achieved it and we have it. We always need to be working on it, and that's how it is. That's how it exists. With the soul has these two dual loves as well. The soul itself has an aspect of sibling love that is natural to it and can live off that love without any effort, just by being aware of its origin and aware of its connection. What he's saying is even more so, and this is a little bit more surprising, or more of a novel idea. And this novel idea that he's introducing is the soul can actually grow in its love as well. The soul is not static in the love and connection with which it is born. The soul can actually, through meditation, through effort, through human engagement in the mitzvot, in our relationship with God, we can actually add a dimension of love that the soul wouldn't naturally experience. So the spousal love is not something that only exists on the human level. What we're saying is that the spousal love is a metaphor for a kind of love that the soul can experience as well. There can be a surge in the love that the soul feels and a withdrawal, similar to the way it exists on a spousal level. And that can add a component to the love and to the relationship, which, even though it isn't as consistent, in some ways it reveals something more real, more human in the relationship that we have with God. And there's an added quality to a newfound love that comes about as a result of our effort that we're not just born with. So we're weighing over here the two sides of consistency versus effort, which is not sustainable to be there all the time. So even though this love is not consistent, there's still some residue of impact that is left. It's like a relationship that you have can never really ultimately be undone. You can end the relationship on some level, but ultimately there's something that always binds you. If you were in a genuine relationship, there's something that always continues. And similarly, he's saying, even though this love that we may awaken during a time of meditation, during a time of prayer, may not last in its consistent intensity the way it does during prayer or during study. However, once you've experienced it, it never really disappears. You never really go back to zero. And in that regard, you could look at this with some perspective of continuous impact that is the result of this kind of love. Comparing the pros and cons of a consistent love versus a combustion love that rises, waxes and wanes from time to time and doesn't have that same consistency. And some people prefer a relationship that is consistent and boring. Some people are ready for a little bit more of a rocky ride, and they'd rather have moments of great, intense love, even if it means that they have to put up with times where the love is less intense and less passionate. If we're talking about attraction to God, then that which is what we're really focusing on over here is, do we want more consistency or do we want more passion? And you can't really have both. It's very hard to have both, because what you're born with, and as we're going to explain this shortly, what you're born with is natural. When something's natural, there's no real resistance to it, which means that it doesn't really build up a passionate force. Whereas something that is unnatural and that we're trying to create, there's always forces that resist it, which is what reveal a more passionate force trying to push it forward. So in this relationship that we have with God, that is more, that fluctuates more, there's more passion because it can be derailed, as we're going to see in a moment. It can be derailed by passion and love for material physical pleasures as well. So there's a real tug of war going on, and that's what fuses the relationship with more passion. Whereas the natural love that doesn't seem to be able to be derailed with physical distraction or attraction to the physical, because it's tapping into the natural, innate, born love. So these are the two sides of the scale over here, and we're not disqualifying or discrediting either one. We're just highlighting the virtues of each one. This is a metaphor where you can have something that presents itself as part of the body, but really it can just crawl out of it. So we know that the snake kind of can shed its outer skin and kind of leaves behind this layer and shell, so to speak, that initially looked like it was part of it. So in a similar sense, he's saying in our own emotional state, in our own psyche, there's also things that implant themselves in our way of being and our way of thinking that we think they are part of who we are, but really they are separate from who we are. So what he's saying is that this love that we have towards God is being launched and expressed from the same place within our human self, where we love and connect and are attracted to physical material pleasures as well. And the love is sometimes convoluted. Sometimes this love that originates in the very animalistic origins of who we are is directed towards very physical material desires and pleasures. But that same potential for love can also be directed towards a passionate, fiery love towards God. And that's why he's saying it fluctuates, because it's a mixed bowl, it's a mixed package. This love is coming from a place within us that can love a very diverse variety of things. And that's why it fluctuates, because the motive and the distraction of the physical can get in the way of the attraction to the spiritual. Because there is such a mixture of things that the human being can be attracted to, sometimes it can be very novel and very altruistic ideals and attractions, like a relationship with God and spiritual pursuits. And sometimes that very same person can be attracted to very self-centered, indulging, materialistic experiences that are coming from the same platform within one's heart, so to speak. So his point over here is, this is what it means: open up for me, my sister, my bride. We've got to open up, we've got to pierce through and reveal the inner love and the inner attraction towards altruistic, higher spiritual values, rather than allow our love to roam freely and become engaged and attracted to any kind of entertainment, any kind of relationship that may or may not be healthy for our true essence, for our true soul. If we can clean up shop and reorganize our hearts to eradicate and remove the distraction and the lust for material and physical pleasures and indulgences, and only channel the love of the heart for godliness, we will actually have a much more passionate and much more consistent love than we would have even than the natural love with which we are born. So the second love that we are talking about over here, the love that is not as natural, that comes more through human effort, but is more passionate and more fiery, we can actually make that more consistent as well. In other words, the product of love that results from the heart and the human aspect is a very powerful and admirable and desirable love. What we need to do is try and make sure that the engine of love that produces the engine of love that is the human love, the physical capacity for love, is channeled more and more exclusively towards spiritual endeavors. And in that way, we will have the best of both worlds. We'll have the passionate human effort of love that is really much more forceful. At the same time, we will also be able to have the consistent love, which is coming from the Ava Musateret, the hidden love. To bring this full circle, just for a moment, he's going to say that this relates to the 6 years of work and the 7th year sabbatical year. That the sabbatical year, which is a time when we withdraw from the physical world and we only focus on the pure natural love that we have with God, that is the sabbatical year. But the 6 years of intense labor and engagement, that is the greater focus, and that is the love that is born out of clearing up the heart and navigating and refining our inner self and utilizing the human energy and the human potential for love, for positivity and for a relationship with God as an exclusive way as possible.